10 years ago, Emilio Estevez made a movie about the Camino de Santiago called The Way. It featured an American father who travels to France to retrieve the body of his estranged son, who had died while attempting the 800-kilometer pilgrimage to Spain's Santiago de Compostela, where St. James the Apostle is thought to have been buried. Now, the father, played by Martin Sheen, feels a compulsion to complete the walk for his son, and he sets out with his son's hiking equipment, his backpack, carrying his ashes. He's unsure as to exactly why he's doing this, except that he senses that somehow this is something that he must do for his son, that this will somehow address his estrangement from his son, and that this is something that he must do to ease his own grief. Despite being in a rather depressed and antisocial state, he is befriended on the trail by 3 people, each on the trail for different reasons. Sheen gets wonderful support from actors playing fellow travelers. There's a verbose Dutchman trying to lose weight, an acid-tongued French-Canadian woman trying to quit smoking, and an Irishman with writer's block. And so the story focuses on these 4 unlikely walking companions, each doing this pilgrimage, the way of St. James, with a certain goal in mind. They persevere and they complete the pilgrimage, enter the Cathedral of Santiago, observe the customs that have marked the end of the Camino for countless pilgrims for 1,000 years, and then they realize that what each of them had hoped to achieve hadn't happened. The man from the Netherlands hadn't lost any weight. The French-Canadian realized that she could not give up smoking. The Irish writer realized that his real issue was not writer's block. And the father who was doing this walk vicariously for his son realized that he had done it for other, more personal reasons. None of them got what they wanted, but each of them got what he or she needed, just like St. James himself, to whose tomb the pilgrims had made their way. Now, St. James, also called James the son of Zebedee, was one of the 12 apostles, distinguished as being in Jesus' innermost circle and the only apostle whose martyrdom is recorded in the New Testament. James and his younger brother John, the apostle, are designated as Boanerges, or the sons of thunder, perhaps because of their characteristic fiery zeal. With Peter and Andrew, James and John were the first 4 disciples whom Jesus called. As a member of the inner circle, James witnessed the raising of Jairus' daughter from the dead, he witnessed the transfiguration, and he witnessed Jesus' agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. And remember, it was the mother of James and his brother John who asked Jesus to let them sit, one at his right hand and one at his left, in his future glory. Our old friend, honor and ambition, one of the 4 classic substitutes along with wealth, pleasure, and power. This, of course, was a favor that Jesus said was not his to grant. And finally, James was beheaded by Herod Agrippa. And according to the Spanish tradition, his body was taken to Santiago de Compostela, where his shrine has attracted Christian pilgrims from all over the world for 2,000 years. I somehow doubt that his mother had this particular honor in mind when she knelt before the Lord asking for that favor. They didn't get what they wanted. They got what God wanted to give. And my friends, the roads of life work like that. Life is a long road with twists and turns and unexpected outcomes. It requires fidelity perseverance, tenacity, and character. Confucius told the Chinese, "It doesn't matter how slowly you go, as long as you don't stop." Well, the background music to this week's reflection is by Sir Paul McCartney, and he's a great example of longevity. He started performing in front of audiences in his church choir at the age of 10. Next month, he will turn 79. He was a prestigious singer and a member of that little group called the Beatles, and he was one half of the Lennon and McCartney songwriting partnership, the most successful in all of history. So my brothers and sisters, I would like to propose to you 7 guidelines, drawn from survivors like Paul McCartney, but also from great theologians and spiritual writers like Daniel Berrigan, Bishop Robert Barron, and Father Ron Rolheiser, specifically designed to help you on the long and the winding road called life. Number 1, welcome and accept the present moment. You know, life is what happens to you while you're planning your life. Don't let your busyness and pressures and heartaches steal the present moment from you. Only the present moment is real. Drink it in with all that it carries. It's the only place where you will experience love and joy. If not now, then when? If not with these people, with whom? If not here, where? Number 2, give yourself permission to be inadequate. Both God and nature give you permission not to be perfect. Don't be too hard on yourself, and especially don't be too hard on others. Everybody falls short. You are not God. You are a creature. Only God is self-sufficient. And like all creatures, you are dependent and you are interdependent. Life works when you acknowledge this, when you accept that you can't give yourself life. Everything is a gift. God doesn't keep you from falling and failing, but He redeems you when you do fall and do fail. You are loved exactly as you are. Fear not. You are inadequate. Number 3, be sufficiently loving and critical, both at the same time. You know, if you're critical without being loving, then you're destructive. But if you're loving without being critical, then you're weak. Your loved ones, your workplace, your community need you to be loving and critical, both at the same time. Don't blackmail community by constantly threatening your withdrawal. Love, be critical, but stay for the long haul. The 4th thing, my favorite, be shockingly happy, earthy, wine drinking. Bask in the goodness of life. We have divine permission to be happy. God, after all, invented wine. Jesus turned water into wine. He scandalized people with His capacity to enjoy life. He drank wine. He let His heart be warmed by His friends. Don't ever confuse John the Baptist with Jesus. John was the ascetic, not Jesus. The 5th guidepost, accept aging. Rely more on the Paschal mystery than on cosmetics. All that dies brings rich new life, even our own bodies. Paschal wisdom will do much more for your joy than a facelift. Aging is an art form. Your soul must be properly aged before it leaves, and your body, like an old wine barrel, takes on a different function and a beauty as you age. Sixthly, serve the right God. God, as Julian of Norwich assures us, is completely relaxed and courteous, himself the happiness and the peace of his dear friends, his beautiful face radiating measureless love like a marvelous symphony. My friends, don't serve any other God than this one. Don't bow to any molten calf, created in the image and the likeness of your own tensions and your own bitterness. And lastly, finally, pray. Pray prayers of helplessness, of gratitude, of praise. God wants us to ask, to seek, to petition persistently, not in order that He might be changed, but that we might be changed. Through the initial refusal to give us what we want, God compels our hearts to expand in order to receive adequately what He wants to give. In the very process of hungering and thirsting for certain goods, we make ourselves worthy vessels. It's not as though in petitioning God we are approaching some stubborn pasha or big city boss whom we hope might be persuaded by our persistence. No, rather it is God who works a sort of spiritual alchemy in us by forcing us to wait. Cynics will argue, and at first glance this is a very valid argument. If God cannot change, then what's the point of asking Him for anything? If God knows everything, then what's the point of telling Him what we need? After all, it was Jesus Himself who told us that God knows what you need before you ask Him. Well, I think that one way to shed light on this problem is to refer to the biblical master metaphor for God, namely a parent. Parents hear petitions from their children constantly. They're always nagging, wanting this and that, persistent requests for things, some good, some bad. And a decent parent knows what their child needs long before he or she asks for it. But none of this conduces a parent towards stifling those requests or pronouncing them useless, even when he is obliged frequently to respond negatively. God indeed knows everything about everything. He is aware of what we need before we even ask. And yet still, like a good parent, He delights in hearing our requests. And of course, like a good parent, He doesn't always respond the way that we would like Him to. We don't always get what we want. We often just get what we need. So, my brothers and sisters, keep these 7 guideposts in your mind as you walk your own personal camino. They are intended as spiritual sustenance, sustaining food for those who walk the long, lonely road of faith and often find themselves discouraged and running out of gas. And God bless you.